All right, he lives. Eyes up here for a second, because my message is really pretty simple. It's that next November, and on every election night, candidates who are with us on Social Security, Medicare, and lowering drug prices have got to end up doing this. Because can you believe that I have been making a living for over 55 years doing this? God bless America! And yes, those of you, how many are familiar with the Bowzer character that I have portrayed for literally 55 years, and I only stopped doing shows because, of mobility issues and stuff last February. So I've really been doing a lot of Bowzer stuff until recently, and now I'm just doing the political stuff. And if you're familiar with the Bowzer character, that I love the music of the 50s and the early 60s. Seriously, some of the greatest music of all time. However, that does not mean that I actually want to return to the 50s or the early 60s. And neither should you. Because I do not want to return to a time before Medicare was passed in 1965, when over 35% of American seniors had incomes below the poverty line. And I certainly do not want to return to a time before Social Security was passed in 1935. Because just think about this for a second. Before Social Security, over 50%, more than 1 out of every 2 of us, American seniors, had incomes below the poverty line. It's a simple fact that Social Security and Medicare are the 2 most successful domestic programs in the entire history of the United States of America, and we need to keep them that way. In fact, we need to expand them. We need to do more than keep them that way. But right now we're on defense. We're going to be on defense for another little bit of time. I feel like in 2029, we may be headed for a great big progressive leap forward, and especially on these kinds of issues, maybe getting to something like Medicare for all. But for now, we're on defense. And there is only one way to get off defense, and that there are simple 3 words that I'm going to give you in another message that I want you to remember. Elect better people. It's really all you need to know. Elect better people. Now let's talk about some of the people that you have elected recently, yes. Because, accountability is very important, and we should not ignore it. So we at Social Security Works, I'm the president of the PAC. Many of you have heard from Alex Lawson, who's our executive director, who's a wonderful speaker and knows a lot about Social Security. Nancy Altman, who founded our organization about 13 years ago, I think it is now, literally knows more than anybody in America about Social Security. So one of our closest partners is the Alliance for Retired Americans. The Alliance for Retired Americans, one thing that I love that they do, and I use all the time, and I'm going to use it right now, is they put out a scorecard every year that grades every member of Congress, House and Senate, on how they vote. What they do is they take 10 issues that are important to seniors, and if you voted the way that the Alliance believes is good for American seniors, you get 10% for each vote. If you voted wrong, you get 0. So a couple of people who are blissfully moving out of our electoral lives pretty soon. Let's talk about Ryan Zinke's lifetime voting record. Out of 100%, He is, and this is bad for even this party, which has become bad on these issues, pretty much across the board. His lifetime voting record out of 100% is 2. 2%. Like people who are certifiably crazy, like Andy Biggs, who's now running for governor of Arizona, he's a 9 lifetime. Like 2 is almost impossible. It's really bad even for them. Like Mitch McConnell's like an 11 or something lifetime, So he's a 2. Steve Daines, who's we won't have to kick around anymore on these kinds of issues. He's a lifetime 6. What that means is that in Ryan Zinke's case, 98% of the time, and in Steve Daines' case, 94% of the time, they have voted wrong for Montana seniors. Wrong. Elect better people. And I know you all know this. But it helps to quantify this stuff. It helps to know what the numbers are. Now, I will also tell you the numbers for last year because they just came out last week. And I would have printed out they don't even have the stuff up on the website. I just happen to know it. It just came out last week. The numbers for 2025 last year, all 4 people in question. So those 2 and Sheehy and Downing, right? Take a wild guess what their score for all 4 of them for last year was. Say it loud with me. 1, 2, 3, 0. A big fat 0. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. Since I am Bowzer, what I would say about this is that it reminds me of when Sha Na Na was in the movie Grease. Are any of you aware that we were in the movie Grease in 1978? And we, in the big scene at the Hop, we sang every song. Remember records? They were round and they had a hole in the middle and stuff like that. Okay, so this was a 2-record set, meaning there were 4 sides. And we in Sha Na Na sang one whole side of what was then the biggest selling soundtrack album of all time. So, like at that time, that was kind of a BFD. And then we finally got sunk by the Titanic, ultimately. But when we were singing all these songs in the big scene at the Hop, I sang the song during the dance contest for 11 and a half minutes. It was a song called Born to Hand Jive. And in the part where Cha-Cha Di Gregorio and Danny Zuko were winning the dance contest, they were doing the limbo. And I'm the guy who was describing all 4 of Montana's representatives, U.S. representatives, House and Senate. I didn't know it in 1978, but I'm the guy who was describing their voting records on senior issues. Because I'm the guy who said, how low can you go? How low can you go? Say it with me. How low can you go? Steve Daines, Ryan Zinke, and how low can you go? Yes, because you cannot actually go any lower than 0. 0 is, in all candor, as low as you can go. So let us get together, and we got some people in the room here who might fit into this category, we certainly hope. Let's all get together in Montana and elect better people. This is what we need to do in order to change our country. In order to change our country. And I speak to you during a very strange week for Social Security. I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff, and then we're going to, do a little bit of kind of fun. I'm going to tell you a personal story a little bit later. But first, I got to tell you about some stuff that's really been happening in Social Security world. One thing that happened this past week is that this week marked what we are now calling Scrap the Cap Day. Right? Yeah, scrap the cap is not a bad idea. Scrap the cap is a good idea. There may be some stages in between before we get to scrap the cap where we adjust the cap. And do you know what this means? How many people in the room know that there's a cap on Social Security? Yeah, see, this, Alex talked about it, right? because this is really good. I used to talk to people, I've been doing this for like 20 years now. I used to talk to people and say, how many people in the room know that there's this cap on Social Security? And like 3 people would raise their hand. Now it's, that was pretty much probably over half the room knows that there's a cap on Social Security. The current cap is $184,500. And what that means is that no one pays in on 1 more cent of income over $184,500 for the year. So somebody like Elon Musk, God, who knows what he declares actually on his tax return, but he probably stopped paying into Social Security on January 1st, maybe January 2nd, Scrap the cap day, which we used to call Millionaire's Day, is the day on which if you're making how many people in this room are making $1 million a year? It's okay if you don't want to admit it. So scrap the cap day is the day on which if you are making $1 million a year, you stop paying into Social Security. And scrap the cap day this year was March the 9th. So whatever that was, today's the 12th. 3 days ago, if you're making $1 million this year, you stop paying into Social Security 3 days ago. You will not pay 1 more cent for the entire rest of the year. Does that sound like it's fair? Would you like to do something about that? Elect better people. Always elect better people, because that's the way we can do something about that. This is not fair. It's wrong. It's been that way since the beginning. It needs to be changed. And whatever projected shortfalls there are with regard to Social Security, in the early 2030s or early to mid 2030s, can be cured by any one of several really good bills that are out there that would await some people who might be in this room, if they get to the House or the Senate, to join on to these pretty good bills, like something called the Social Security Expansion Act, which puts a little donut hole in the cap and sets it again, people paying in at $250,000 a year. There's another pretty good bill that puts it at $400,000 a year. All of these extend the life of the program, allow for expansion of benefits, changes the CPI, the cost of living index, by which you all, notice how much your Social Security goes up or doesn't go up every year, to a better calculation called CPI-E, which takes into account that healthcare costs go up quicker than any other costs in the economy, and therefore for older people, there should be a better calculation for how your cost of living index adjusts itself. So all of these good bills await, and there's really nothing between us and these good bills passing, any one of these good bills passing. There's nothing between us other than the political will to do it. All there is between us and this reality, and getting the whole issue of Social Security and Medicare, and whether they're funded, somehow, look, what could be more obvious this week than the fact that we're spending what some people estimate at $2 billion a day on another missionless war, this time in Iran, and yet somehow or another, we don't have enough money to give health care to Americans. That's just really nuts. It's just really disgraceful. There aren't even words for how disgraceful that is. What we've got to do is elect better people in order to get ourselves to where we need to go. So scrap the cap day was 3 days ago. That was a big piece of news from our point of view. We put out a lot of stuff about it, social media and stuff. The other thing that happened this week that I'm sure you've been following a lot of the stuff, the escapades of Doge. Speaking of Elon Musk, Doge has gone a little bit back burner in terms of the headlines, but there was plenty of damage done by Doge. There are Social Security offices that are understaffed, undermanned. They were understaffed to begin with. Before Doge came in with the machete, before Elon showed up with the machete and did the ugly deeds, Social Security was at a 50-year low in staffing to begin with. So Social Security offices are scrambling to get by. This is happening all over the country. Not too many offices have literally closed yet. It's just that the hard workers in the Social Security Administration who still have their jobs are doing yeoman work. One person is doing the work of 5 people right now. So this is a problem in and of itself. But what came out this week was really something to behold, and I do, I'm not going to take up this whole discussion about it, but it did dominate our week. And I do encourage you to look up any one of the multitude of good articles that were written this week. When it came to light that one of the Doge employees, one of the 22-year-olds basically, of the Doge employees who were sent in there, said out loud that he took all of the data that they stole and delivered it to his new company. So if you don't know this yet, look it up. This is a really petrifying thing. It's a petrifying thing, number one, that they stole the data in the first place. And that's old news. That data is gone. They went 120 people deep into the Social Security Administration to find somebody that they could make acting Social Security commissioner. They found a guy named Leland Dudek, who was living in the middle, the kind of middle of the bowels of the Social Security Administration. And they literally went through, they fired everybody above Leland Dudek, including people who had been there, the second in command, who was terrific, had been there forever, gone, because she wouldn't let him have the data, right? And all the way down until about 120 people down, and they found this guy who would let them have the data. And, oddly, someone of the reputable magazines did sort of a puff piece on this guy, and we were going, "What? How could you do this?" It wasn't Vanity Fair, but it was something, of good repute. It was like ProPublica or something, I think it was. Did a puff piece on this guy Leland Dudek, and we're going, no, this guy is a villain. He gave out everybody's data. So we have known for a long time that the data is gone, but now it has come out publicly that this data has been taken to private businesses and used for whatever purposes these people think it's okay to give out all your data, all of our data. So this is really ugly stuff that, once again, there's plenty of opportunity. There are plenty of ways to call this in, but Congress, and for that matter, the White House, but Congress first, has got to have the political will to do it. And, I don't know that we're going to get that out of this Congress. So once again, it always comes back to that same theme. We can solve a lot of this if we elect better people. I just suggest that we keep that in mind. We hold the people who are there accountable. There are a few in this state that we won't have to kick around anymore. That's a good thing. But the people who are put up to replace them, sadly, this has become, we at Social Security Works, we're nonpartisan, essentially, in the same way that Big Sky 55 Plus is. But as years have gone by, these issues seem to be more and more partisan issues all the time. And it really has created a big problem. Every year I don't send questions, we have a simple questionnaire. Will you support protecting and expanding Social Security? Will you support protecting and expanding Medicare? Will you support Medicaid expansion as defined in the Affordable Care Act? Will you fight to lower drug prices? And will you always refer to Social Security and Medicare as earned benefits and never use the pejorative term entitlements? Okay? These are not hard questions. These are pretty easy questions. I don't send questionnaires to, wouldn't send a questionnaire to Ryan Zinke or Steve Daines if they were running again, because they got a track record. He's a 2 and he's a 6. We know where they stand on these issues. But every year, if it's an open seat, as you have many in Montana, I will send them to both sides, because, nobody has a federal track record yet. So I'll send them to both sides, and I can tell you, over 20 years of doing this, I've never gotten a questionnaire back from a Republican candidate yet. Not even once. Yeah, it's like you could at least send it back. Even if you just check no on every box, you could at least do people the courage. But they know that these are, because what's the real goal? And we could talk about this all night. I won't, because I want to get to some personal stuff. But the real goal, as we know, has been to privatize these programs for a long time. Medicare, and that's another subject we could talk about for an entire night of this. Medicare Advantage is a topic in and of itself, which is a sort of partial privatization, putting an insurance company once again between you and your doctors. And we certainly believe that this is a dangerous practice, and that some of the plans, it's hard to tell a good one from a bad one. Traditional Medicare with a supplement and a drug plan is certainly safer, certainly takes a lot of risk out of it. And again, a topic for another time, but this is really the stuff that we have to look at and address. Same thing with Social Security. It's always an effort to privatize. Why would anyone want to privatize Social Security? Probably the most frequently asked question of all. And the answer couldn't be simpler: just follow the money. Because there is now, for a program that they're claiming is going to go bankrupt in, by the early 2030s, first of all, it's not going to go bankrupt if nobody lifts a finger. It would pay out about 80% of its benefit if no one lifted a finger and passed any of the bills that I already mentioned to you. And 80% of the benefit is not adequate, but 80% of the benefit is also not bankrupt, right? So let's make that distinction. But at the moment that we speak, there's $2.7 trillion in the Social Security trust funds. That's a lot of money. Who would love to get their mitts on that money? Wall Street. Wall Street is correct. Wall Street would love for you to invest whole or in part any amount of that money on the Wall Street casino, because people who work on commission are going to get commission whether they make you money or they lose you money. That money is currently invested in the safest investment in the world, at least until this moment, U.S. Treasury bills, right? So the result is that Social Security, over 90 years of existence virtually, has never missed a payment. Never once. And even these characters haven't missed a payment yet, which, we find a little bit surprising, and, we certainly don't want them to miss a payment. But this has been a very reliable bedrock program, which, as I said at the beginning of this, has kept more people out of poverty, along with Medicare, than any other programs in the history of the country. And that's why Bowzer would say, bum 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 bum, dang dang dang, ding dong ding. I love Social Security. And I, as Jon Bauman, would second that. But now let me get to the personal reason why I'm here tonight, why I'm here in Montana at this beautiful hotel. What's the exact name of the hotel? Northern, just the Northern? Yeah. Which I really am enjoying. I've been here since last night. Tomorrow I'm going to go to Little Bighorn for the second time. And partly because I want to see, my understanding is they've already sort of whitewashed some history out there, and I want to see what they did. But, and then we'll report back and post some videos. But I want to get to the personal reason why I'm here tonight. And it took me a while even to figure this out. You know I love the music of the 50s and the early 60s, just like I said. And I kind of refer to that as the classical music of rock and roll. But many of you probably don't know that I didn't even start out in rock and roll at all. I actually started out in real classical music. When I was about 7 years old, I sat down at the piano that we had in the house and picked out the tune to "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning," and my parents decided, oh, let's give him some piano lessons, and then I took to that, and I was pretty good at it, you know, and went to the local piano teachers, who then suggested, when I was 12, that I auditioned for the Juilliard School of Music Preparatory Division in Manhattan, and lo and behold, I got in. And from the time I was 12 to the time I was 17, I took a bus and 3 subways from the outskirts of New York City all the way into Upper Manhattan, and I attended the Juilliard School of Music Preparatory Division. So now I'm going to be Bowzer for a minute. So if you're a little kid learning how to play classical music, especially in New York City, where do you want to grow up one day to perform? The Northern Hotel in Billings, Montana. All right, you said it before, say it one more time. Carnegie Hall. No, not the Northern Hotel. I'd probably never even heard of Billings, Montana when it was in Queens, but who knows? I certainly heard of Montana, though, which, by the way, I'll just throw this in as an aside, try not to sidetrack me too much, sidetrack myself too much. This is not the first time I've said this. In the lower 48 of the United States, this is the most beautiful state in America, in my opinion. This is the one. And I've done shows in 50 states, and I've done a lot of political work in all those states. But you've got some stuff in this state. I mean, Glacier National Park to me is actually number one, you know, for me, period, everywhere of all the national parks. Glacier, Yellowstone, you just have an amazingly beautiful state here. Only Alaska, which is, you know, kind of a whole other world and stuff, and Hawaii, which is completely different, you know, would be even a rival. So I was certainly aware of Montana, but I admit that I'd never heard of the Northern Hotel. Back in Queens, you know, being born in Brooklyn and raised in Queens. So you're a little kid, you're learning how to play classical music in New York City, and your mother has sent you to the Juilliard School. So where do you want to grow up one day to perform? Say it one more time. Carnegie Hall. So the year was 1971. Carnegie Hall, in desperate financial trouble, turns to rock and roll. And who should be invited to perform in the fabled, the legendary Carnegie Hall, but my old group? So there we are. There we are. Sha Na Na on stage at Carnegie Hall. And in the third row of the audience was the only person standing in the entire audience of Carnegie Hall, my mother. Bessie Bauman, the woman who forced me to practice. And she stood proudly in Carnegie Hall while her son sang Rama Lama Ding Dong. And she waved and she shouted, Jonathan! That's my real name that only she ever called me. Jonathan, you made it! Because it turned out that to your mother, whether it was Chopin mazurkas or Rama Lama Ding Dong, Carnegie Hall was Carnegie Hall. And that is a completely 100% every single syllable of a true story. Yeah, it's a totally true story. I have lots of witnesses of this completely true story. And then when the show was over, my really favorite part was when the show was over, she went out to the merchandising table and started signing autographs, Bowzer's mother. So now, in her honor, because she did force me to practice. Now let's see if this hopefully is going to turn back on. I think this is going to turn back on. Let's make sure everything works. This is the best piano we could get our hands on. Okay. So in her honor, I'm going to try to play, not quite weighted action, but close enough, her favorite melody. This is the easy part of the Chopin Etude in E major. So my mom was a public school librarian. And for only part of her life, by the way, at PS 45 in Brooklyn. Like a lot of women of her generation, she went back to school late in life. She finished her bachelor's. She went to Queens College, got a degree in library science, and went to work at PS 45. And even after my father passed prematurely, she had a lot of good years, quite a few good years, and she loved that job. And finally, when she did come to retire, and I basically had the responsibility of, taking care of her in her later years. There were only two of us, me and my brother, and he was a colonel in the armed forces and traveled all over the world, but wasn't around a lot. And I can tell you firsthand that it was her Social Security and the relatively new program at that time called Medicare that allowed her to live a life of dignity and independence that was completely unknown to my grandparents, whose lives I also clearly remember, and who had to move in with their kids in their later years. And I think we just all need to take a moment to realize that those were the programs, Social Security and Medicare, were the programs that allowed people to live in dignity and independence that was unknown to previous generations. So that continues to be the personal reason why I'm here today. And it took me a while to realize, it's like, why do I want to get involved in senior issues? Well, yeah, okay, my audience is there. You know, and that was true a while ago, and like, we're all still here, so we're doing okay. But, and you know, the Sha Na Na TV show, which was a show from the late 70s to the mid 80s, it's got a lot of fans who are 55 now, who were little kids. You know, I get a lot of photographs of people sending me photographs of when they were 4 years old, you know, and they're doing the Bowzer pose. But, you know, basically, I have aged with the audience, all of us here. And that's why I gravitated towards senior issues and gravitated towards becoming, you know, a real expert on senior issues, thanks to people like Nancy Altman and Alex Lawson. And, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to break my record of 57 campaigns on the ground from 2018. Where literally Nancy Pelosi told me that, okay, you're the winner. You went to more campaigns, she said, than I did. So I don't think I'm going to be able to do that again. But I'm going to get to as many as I possibly can during this cycle, including coming back here to Montana. Because I think you have some really important and really winnable races here that I want to be part of, and we at Social Security Works are going to be part of, because I think this state can go in a different direction, and it's about to, it needs to, and we can fulfill this promise of making sure that these, you know, I know you had an intergenerational part of your program today, and that's critically important because we need to make sure that these programs, everybody's paying into them. You know, our kids and our grandkids have been paying into Social Security their whole working lives. They've paid 6.2% in. Elon Musk hasn't paid 6.2% of his income in, but our kids and grandkids have. So we're going to have to even that up by electing some better people. Now, so here's the stuff you'd be more likely to hear from Bowzer. Now, I'm going to take it upon myself to make kind of a statement that's related to what I said before about sending out the questionnaires. So if you'd like to, you can sing along. This song used to be called Goodnight, Sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. Then after this, I'm going to take any questions anybody may have. But I'm also going to change the words. Sing along if you will. Do, 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 do. Good night, Republicans. Well, it's time to go. Do, 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 do. Good night, Republicans. Well, it's time to go. Do, 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 do. Don't hate to leave you, but we really must say good night, Republicans. Good night. I won't miss you, Ryan Zinke. Good night, Republicans. Good night. I won't miss you, Steve Daines. Good night, Republicans. I love Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. And let's lower some drug prices. Let's elect better people. Thank you for having me here. Thank you. Too kind, actually. Thank you.